I saw people on LinkedIn who are charging over $500 for a Claude Skills training. So I thought the same thing inside a client's business community. And before you think it's a flex, it's not. Here's why I did it and why I'm putting the whole thing on YouTube today. You see, many people are using Claude now, but they're using it like they're using ChatGPT, an AI tool that you chat with. But with Claude Skills and Cowork, it's a totally different approach. So that's what this video is about. I'm going to walk you through everything I covered in the workshop, the task and time audit, my ABC framework for building skills and delegating tasks, the Cowork folder structure that makes it run cleanly, and a live demo. My goal is for you to delegate at least one repetitive task to Claude. Let's get into it. By the way, if we haven't met yet, my name is Hazel June and I work with online education businesses, designing online programs, building AI resources, and teaching how to leverage AI without the tech speak. I've worked with top online programs in the space that generate over 7 figures per year, coach hundreds of business owners, and train thousands of people on program design and leveraging AI. Now, real quick before anything else, most people use AI like a chatbot. You ask a question, it gives you an answer, and then you paste in some text. It rewrites it, you describe a problem, it suggests solutions, right? It's useful for sure. However, a Claude skill is a trained operator. It's a session that knows its job, knows the format, knows the standard, and runs the same way every single time. You do not have to re-explain, you don't have to re-prompt, you just have to set it up once and then you run it. So when you build one, you stop doing the task, you start directing it so it does the task for you. And that sounds subtle, but it's not. Okay, before I walk you through the process, let me do a quick rundown of my ABC framework in delegating tasks to AI using Claude Skills. So the first phase in the framework is audit, and it is a two-step process. So the first part is you actually auditing your time and how you're actually spending it, not how you feel you're spending your time, but what you're actually doing with your time. That's the first part. The second part of the audit process is having Claude looked at everything that you've listed, all of the activities that you've logged, and the amount of time that you spend for each of those activities. And then have Claude score everything. And from that score helps you prioritize what the highest leverage task you can delegate to AI first. Now, the second part of the ABC framework is build. Now, the build part is where you actually develop the Claude skills that will actually get that task done for you. And then the final part of the process is check. And check is really testing and iterating the Claude skills that you have built in the previous step. So once you have audited your time and identified the highest leverage tasks you can delegate to AI, you're then going to build it. Once you build the Claude skills, you then have to test if it's actually doing what it's supposed to be doing. You're not going to get it perfect the first time. You have to iterate and continue to iterate and refine the Claude skills until you're satisfied with the overall workflow and the quality of the output. Now that you know my ABC framework, let's get into each of those steps in more detail. So the first part, like what I've mentioned, is the task and time audit. Before you can build a skill, you need to know what's worth building one for. And that's what the audit does, which is the first step in my ABC framework. So you want to audit how you're actually spending your time and how much time you're actually spending on things. Not what you think or what you feel you spend, but how you actually spend your time. I recommend you track your time for 7 to 10 days. Every 15 to 30 minutes, document what you're doing. The goal is to find out where your time actually goes. Now, don't bullshit yourself in this. You got to be totally honest with yourself, or else this thing won't work to your advantage. Okay, once you have completed your 7 to 8 day time audit, you're then going to ask Claude to help you identify which task would be the best one to delegate first and why. Now, the good news is I've built a time and task audit skill, so when you run it in Claude, it will automatically go through the process with you. So let me show you how that works. it walks me through the whole thing. So it asks me a couple of questions, then it digs deeper on what I've provided, and it continues to dig deeper on the things that I was sharing. And it will continue to do so until it has gotten enough context on how you're actually spending your time. Now, at the end of your conversation or this process with Claude, it's going to give you this task and time audit scoreboard, which lists down all of the things that you were doing and then scores it using the ICE framework. And then based on the score, it's going to tell you exactly what task you need to delegate first, the thought process behind it, and then the next steps, like how you're actually going to build it. Now, here's what I love about this exercise and why I started the workshop here before anyone built anything. When you run this audit inside a Claude skill, you're actually experiencing the skill in action while you're learning about it. You're describing your own task, Claude analyzes them, and then it hands you back a prioritized list of what to build first. You're inside the methodology while learning it. And that's how it sticks, not from watching, but from doing. Now, I have some good news for you because that task and time audit skill that I made it available for download for free. All you got to do is check the description below this video. It's the exact task audit skill file that I've shared in the workshop that I did. So go ahead and grab that free resource. Okay, we're done with the audit phase. But before we move to the next phase, which is build, let me show you first how you can install the task and time audit skill that I've provided for you, available for free download. So what you want to do is go to customize on the left panel. Now, as you can see, I'm using the Claude app version, but you can also do this in the web version of Claude, okay? So go to customize, and then from here, you're going to see a couple of different options. What you want to do is click on create new skills. Now, as you can see, I have a bunch of different skills already created based on the tasks that I want to delegate. But what you want to do here is click on this plus sign. You see that plus sign right there? Click that, and then from the three options, you want to choose upload a skill. All right. Now, there's a couple of ways that you can do this. You can either drag the whole file to this thing right here, or you can click upload and choose the skill file that you would want to install. I've uploaded the skill file and I've gotten this prompt, and that's because I already have the task time audit installed in my skills library. That's the reason why it's asking to replace. But in your case, because it's the first time that you're going to install or upload this skill, you're not going to get the same prompt, okay? It will just automatically upload the task time audit. And once you upload it, you want to make sure that it's enabled. By default, it's enabled, but you just want to make sure that it is enabled. Now, once you have this installed, then you can start running the skill. So basically the same thing that I've done right here. You just have to say, let's run the task audit, please. And then it's going to walk you through the whole process that I've just walked you through earlier. All right, now we're in the second phase of the ABC framework. Remember, ABC stands for audit, build, and check. We're in the build phase, okay? You've run the audit, you know exactly what task to start with, right? Now what? Well, now we build the skills. You're going to delegate the task by building Claude Skills. Now, if you're wondering what the hell are Claude Skills, a Claude skill is a reusable set of instructions that you install within Claude. So think of it like an SOP, a standard operating procedure. When you hire and onboard a new team member, usually you're going to train them, right? You're going to give them your SOPs, your standard operating procedures, so that they would know how to exactly execute on your task. They know exactly what to do, for what, for which, at what time, for how long, right? That's what the SOPs are for. It's a documentation of how your workflows and your processes are supposed to be implemented. Think of Claude Skills like your documented processes. So what you're going to do is you're going to create a Claude skill, aka the SOP, for the task that you're supposed to be delegating first. Now, this is where most people get stuck. They open a new Claude session, they type a vague instruction, and then the output is inconsistent. So they figure the tool just doesn't work for the kind of work. Okay, so this is how you're going to build your job description, aka your Claude skill. Kind of like what you see in here, you have to define what the task is actually about. You're going to give it as much context as you can about the work and the task that needs to be completed. You want to specify the output format. You want to give it some guardrails or constraints that it needs to be aware of. You want to tell it what done actually looks like. You want to tell it what to avoid. And then as much as possible, you want to give it a trigger, like the input it needs to get the task started. Now, and here's the great part. When you do this in Claude, it's actually going to build the thing for you. So Claude does an amazing job of creating your Claude skills. So it's going to work through the process of identifying what needs to be done depending on your instructions and the task that you specified for it to create. And then it's going to present you with a summary of what the skill is about, kind of like what it did here. And then what you want to do is you want to click that. And then on the right-hand side panel, you're going to see what the file looks like. So what you want to do here is look at the whole thing, review it, make sure that you don't miss anything, make sure that there are no gaps, and it has the complete steps of the whole workflow that you wanted to do. Now, if for instance, you're not happy with it, there's something missing, or you want to add some steps, or you want to give Claude feedback, say that. So if you notice here, when I asked it to build the task and time audit skill, I actually gave it feedback. I said we want to start by getting some context on what their business is about and what their goals are. And we had that back and forth, right? And you're going to continue that back and forth until you're happy with the final output that Claude actually created for you. So I can't stress this enough. If you want to build Claude skills, let Claude build it for you. Describe what you want. Make sure that you're specific enough. Make sure that you give it enough context. Make sure that you know exactly what output you're looking for. Make sure that it knows the constraints or the guardrails, and then have it build for you. And then if there is anything that you think it missed, say it, right? Give it feedback, push back. And then you're going to get that back and forth. Then when you're happy with the final output, you can download it. So you can upload it to your skills library, kind of like what I showed you earlier. Or if it gives you the option to copy it to your skills in just one click of a button, go ahead and do that. Okay, now we're in the final phase of the ABC framework. So just a quick recap. We've done the first two phases. A, for audit, we audited how you're spending your time. And then from there, we identified what is that high-level task you can start delegating to AI. And then the second phase is all about the build part. This is where you build the Claude skill that's going to handle that task for you moving forward. Now on to the last phase, which is check. And the check is usually the testing and iteration part of the process. All right, let me show you exactly how this works. You're going to run the skill, and then you're going to test it. You're going to review the output and then look if it's actually doing what it's supposed to be doing. Is it following the steps? Is it giving you the quality of the output that you're looking for? If it's not, if it's missing a step, if it's actually not giving you the quality that you want, if there are any gaps, if there are any holes in the workflow, then you want to rerun it. Then you want to give that feedback to Claude and have Claude rebuild the whole thing for you. Kind of like what I did here. So I keep testing the file and making sure that it's actually working. And if there's anything that I think it's not doing properly, I give the feedback. And if you notice, I've had several back and forth with Claude just to refine this whole workflow. And this is exactly what you're going to do. You're going to provide feedback, continue to iterate that workflow, continue to iterate that skill. But here's the cool part. You're going to have Claude rebuild it for you. So you're not building from scratch, and you are not doing the rebuilding part. You're having Claude do it for you, kind of like what I was doing here. At this point, you've gone through the whole ABC framework. You've audited your time. You know exactly what task you need to build first. And then you build the Claude skills who's going to handle that task for you. And then you've also tested, checked, make sure it's running the way it's supposed to be run. You've done the thing. So you might be thinking, how does this all work, right? the great thing about Claude Skills is that you can use it in all of the interfaces in Claude. You can use it in Claude Chat, you can use it in Claude Cowork, you can also use it in Claude Code. That's amazing. So if you're going to be using Cowork for this, this is the recommended folder structure that I would encourage you to do. It's something that I've learned from somebody, I forgot who, but this is a very clean process of how you're going to store and organize your files whenever you work with Cowork. So here's the thing. What you want to do is create a Cowork folder in your desktop, your documents, wherever you want to store it. And it doesn't have to be named Cowork. You can rename it the way you want. But essentially, the structure should be the same. So in that Cowork folder, you want to create 4 subfolders: inbox, process, outputs, and reference. Inbox is where you drop all of the files that you want Cowork to process, to work on, to update. Once those files have been processed, Cowork is going to save them or move them to the processed folder. So you know exactly which files have not been processed yet and which files are up for your review. Now, if Cowork needs to create new files, it will put it in the outputs folder. So you know which ones are new and which ones are updated, which ones are not updated, because they're all in different folders. And then finally, you have the reference folder. The reference folder is a read-only folder because that's where you're going to save all of the context files. What do I mean by context files? Your context files are the things that Cowork needs to know about you, your business, how you run it, so that Cowork has all of the context it needs in order to complete the task for you. Now, when you use this folder structure, make sure that you include that thing right here in the box. Make sure that you include that in the first prompt so that Cowork knows exactly how to treat the folders. Here's the mental model that I would love to highlight. Essentially, you have the Cowork folder that tells Cowork who you are, how you work, and what files it needs to be working on. And then you have the skills file. And the skills file is your SOP, the job description that you've trained Claude to do. And together, you don't just have a chat tool anymore. You have a capable operator. Now, one thing worth knowing about this approach is having Claude read a folder of context files every session. It's similar to how projects work in Claude or ChatGPT. It's not new, but it's definitely useful. Now, the difference with skills is the modularity. You're not asking Claude to know everything about you all at once. You're pointing it at a specific job with a specific standard, and that's what makes the output consistent. All right, let me show you how this works in action. So as you can see, I'm using the desktop app, and I'm in the Cowork tab, right? One of the skills that I've created early on is this guest interview research skill, because I'm doing an interview series where I interview authors, publishers, editors, everyone in the publishing industry, and I need Claude to do the research for me and come up with 10 questions that I can ask in the interview. That way I don't have to manually do it. Because sometimes in a week, I would have 3 different interviews scheduled. And so I don't want to spend that much time researching when Claude can actually do it for me. So I've created that guest interview research. This is the entire Claude skill. Now I just had 2 interviews scheduled last week, and I ran the skill so that Claude can help me out with the research. And if you notice, I said research my next 2 guests and create the respective interview prep and question set. Make sure to include the source for each section. And then I added a note, which is the prompt. Remember that prompt that I asked you to include in the first prompt that you're going to use? So this is what I did, right? I asked it to create new files and outputs, and then the reference folder is read-only. Okay, so once I prompted Claude to do the research for my next 2 guests, it started running the skill. And if you notice with Cowork, you're going to see this progress section right here where you can see all of the steps that Cowork has mapped out in order to complete the step. And you will be able to see in real time, you'll be able to see the completion of each of the steps. And then at the bottom, you're going to find the folder that I've given it access to, the folder where it's supposed to save the files that I ask it to prepare. And then you're also going to see the context section, which is the different things that Cowork used in order to fulfill the task. So it's running this skill, it's running the doc skill, because it will have to create the output in doc format. And of course, it has the web search connector because it has to search my guest's website so it can do its research and come up with the 10 questions that I ask it to prepare. As you can see, it ran the whole workflow. And then it created the prep guide for me and gives me a summary of what it was able to come up with. And then it created 2 different documents for 2 of the guests. And both of these documents were saved in that outputs folder that I have structured in my co-work folder. Let me show you. Okay, so you remember that co-work folder structure that I told you about? This is it. So I have all 4 folders, right? And remember that Claude skill that I ran to help me with the research and interview prep? When I run that skill, I gave it enough context about the guest. So if you notice, I dumped a file here that gave Cowork context on who it's actually researching about and their specific websites and other stuff about them that I know. And remember, the reference folder is read only, and I specified that in my instructions. So Cowork is not going to edit this file. It's just using this, reading this file for context. So it knows exactly what to do and how to fulfill the task. And then the outputs, the 2 interview prep documents are actually saved in this outputs folder. So remember, the outputs folder is where Claude creates new files. So whenever it creates new files for you as part of the skill, then you will be able to see it here in the outputs folder. So now, because of Cowork and of the Claude skill, I now have 2 interview prep guides that I will use for my scheduled interviews. I don't have to spend 1 hour, 2 hours on the whole research thing and coming up with questions, because Cowork and skill was able to do it in less than 10 minutes. Definitely saved me a lot of time. And this is exactly what I shared in the workshop that I did for my client's business community. It's not about automation. It's not about AI replacing how you think. It's about delegating the execution layer so your thinking goes where it actually matters. Now, that whole thing that I just walked you through, that's what the whole workshop was about. It's not about automation. It's not about AI replacing how you think. It's about delegating the execution layer so your thinking goes where it actually matters. Now remember, the Task Audit Skill file is in the description below. Download it, run it, and have your first Claude skill built. Now, if you want more of this and this is helpful or useful for you, go ahead and hit subscribe. I'm documenting everything that I'm doing for clients, the things that I'm building for my own business, and how I'm leveraging AI and productized IP as a solopreneur. I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.